You've learned a lot in life, and your passion is public speaking, whether it's on a stage, online, voiceovers, a podcast, a trainer, and you've been looking for info on how to take it to the next level. This is Speaker Show and Tell. We're a weekly show that features interviews with successful speakers and experts, and you'll get tips, tricks, and strategies to improve your speaking skills and the business of speaking. You'll get actionable advice you can use right now, and you'll get inspiration from pros who've done it. Pros that have gone through the struggles just like you and created massive results. Let's do this. Welcome to Speaker Show and Tell. And now your hosts, Eric Lofholm and Sabrina Gibson.
Hi, this is Eric Lofholm. I want to welcome all of you to Speaker Show and Tell. I'm with my partner, Sabrina Gibson. Sabrina, Woo! Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited. I'm glad we didn't make any mistakes getting here.
Oh my gosh, I know. We are just perfect. We don't make any mistakes ever.
Of course not. I know. Well, it's crazy. If you think about it, humans are just mistakeful. I don't even think that's a word. That's probably a mistake that I just said, but we're people who are naturally tend to make mistakes. So can you think of a mistake that you wish you hadn't made when you were speaking? Eric, I'll put you on the spot. I love to do that.
I have made so many mistakes in my speaker career. I made a mistake this morning. I had booked an appointment with a referral partner, and we were supposed to meet for coffee at Starbucks. And so it's like 9:05 and I'm 5 minutes late for an appointment that I forgot about. So he's texting me going, Eric, where are you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And I'm the one that booked the appointment. So it's just life, we goof up, and I asked him, please forgive me. What can I do to make up for it? And we move on. And so, mistakes is a part of it. And there's so many opportunities in speaking to make mistakes with the tech, with the video, with the this, with the that, with our PowerPoint slides. One time I was giving a speech and I forgot to plug my computer in after lunch. And so right in the middle of my speech, my computer crashed out on me because the battery died. And
oh no,
I've had that happen. I could spend an hour talking about all the mistakes I've made. We have a great guest, so we're not going to do that, but I've made a ton of mistakes and I will continue to make them.
I know. I hear you. I had an appointment one time up in at Notre Dame, I guess is the way you say it. And I flew into Chicago and had to drive like an hour or whatever it is over there. And the time zone is different. And even though it's just like an hour away. And so it took forever, by the way, to book the appointment. It was like this huge deal with this huge buyer. And it was so incredibly embarrassing. But time zones have gotten me a lot with speaking engagements, where, the time zone's different. You maybe you didn't mark it in your calendar or my calendar. Especially being in Arizona, we don't change time. So that messes me up. So yeah, so we're going to talk about all kinds of crazy mistakes that happen as speakers. And we're really excited. We have amazing guests, as you know, on the show. And our next guest, she's a public speaking coach, trainer, and author. And get this, Eric, she's been speaking since 1992. So quick math, 31 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I loved what she said about herself online. She said, hi, I'm that slightly weird friend who sometimes embarrasses you in public just by being herself. A little too loud or a little too silly. I totally could relate to that. I loved it. It says, so I figured who better to have talk to us about the biggest mistakes speakers make and how to fix them than Lisa Braithwaite. And I'm glad hopefully I didn't mess that up. That would have been embarrassing, huh? Yep. Welcome, Lisa.
Yay.
Good job. Yeah, nothing's worse than having your guest and completely slaughtering their name.
It has happened to me more times than I can count. Let's just start with that. That's a mistake a speaker can make, not checking the pronunciation of the name of the person you're going to introduce. Let's start with that one.
How do you fix that? I mean, that's a big mistake.
That's a tough one because it happens. And sometimes you don't want to embarrass the person, right, who just butchered your name. And so sometimes people like to correct their name. I might just kind of say casually, yes, I'm Lisa Braithwaite and I'm here to do da 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 da, right? I might just kind of make it a really light little comment, not like I'm trying to correct. But when you have a name that's commonly mispronounced, like I do, I am usually really good. And I didn't do this, Sabrina. So this was also my fault. It goes both ways. If you're the speaker, you should also make sure the person can pronounce your name. And on my introduction sheet that I give people who are going to introduce me, it actually does spell it out.
Like phonetically?
Yes, phonetically.
Yeah.
And I say, please practice it first. Make sure you're saying it right. So we can go either way, right?
Oh yeah, it's really funny when we transcribed the podcast, right? And when it came back, it never fails. Eric's name's always slaughtered.
Oh,
And it's
Yep.
never the way that you would think it is. I'm like, wow, that is really weird. I mean, I'm going to start making a list because it's kind of funny how many times that it doesn't get it right. So I can only imagine how many times they've gotten your name incorrect, Eric. Is that correct?
I think it's about 50% of the time they get it right and 50% they don't. And you can look at my name on the screen. There's no T in there. And everyone wants to put a T in there. There's no like silent T. It's just not there. Like, but whatever. So I'm with Elise. I just roll with it. It's just the way it is. And I'll put on my speaker bio intro thing, Lofhome, Lofholm. And then that way they know how to say it. So, but I don't always tell the person how to properly do it, and it gets butchered all the time. So
that's hilarious. I've been called everything under the sun. You would think that Sabrina would be pretty straightforward, but I've been called Serena, Samantha, Stephanie, you name it. I mean, it's just crazy. And sometimes it's been when they've introduced me to speak and I just roll with it. I don't say anything because I figured if they really like me, they'll figure out my name at the end.
Exactly. And I had the opportunity to take my husband's name when I got married, and I chose to keep my maiden name. So I chose this. It's who I am. And like you said, we just roll with it. We're used to, because I know I will try to make sure people pronounce it properly in advance. I forgot to do that with you, but you reached out to me. So thank you. That was modeling good.
My pleasure. Yeah, I've learned from my mistakes apparently, because I have done it before. How'd you get into speaking? Just let's start there. Like, can you give us a little brief example of how'd you get to be a speaker for 31 years, for crying out loud?
Yeah, because when I started out, I started out working in the nonprofit sector shortly after graduating from college. I started working the nonprofit sector, and one of my first nonprofit jobs was working in a domestic violence shelter. And I didn't know when I took the job that I was going to be going into high schools and giving presentations. So yes, I started out I was hired to run the children's program in the shelter. And then when I got to work, they said, by the way, here's a piece of paper with your presentation that you're going to go give to high school students. And that was my rude awakening in 1992. To speaking about difficult topics to people who don't want to hear them.
Wow.
That was my first experience as a speaker.
That's crazy.
Actually, I need to go back because I was on the speech team in high school. I should actually say that I was on the speech team in high school and I was a theater major. So I was always performing, but my first paid official speaking was speaking about domestic violence.
Wow.
How about some of the challenges that you face in speaking, whether it was in the beginning or at any point in your career? Anything stand out for you around challenges?
Well, the first thing when I was told I needed to go speak to teenagers, I was petrified because we've all been teenagers, right? We know how teenagers are. And I was certain that they were going to be mean and they were going to be rude and they were going to ignore me. And probably the best experience I ever had was having to speak to teenagers as my first paid speaking work, because I had to learn how to build trust, how to listen, how to show that I respected them, how to use humor, how to be engaging. I mean, all the things that we tell speakers to do, I learned that when I was, 24, 25, speaking to high school kids in schools. That was probably my biggest challenge that I still use and have learned from up until today.
That's really great. It is hard to incorporate all those pieces. We had another guest that had like 7 things that if you wanted to really engage the audience as a speaker, and I thought, man, I don't think I'm doing any of those. I mean, you think, wow, what have I been doing all these years? But it was just a nice thing to tune up with it. So you became a speaker coach. What made you want to be a speaker coach?
Getting laid off from paid jobs, basically.
I didn't mean to laugh at you getting laid off, but it's just that's a funny, that's a,
yeah.
a great,
So in the nonprofit sector, I was speaking, teaching, and training for 16 years. Those were my jobs. And I got one job after another where I was a training coordinator and I was doing employee training. And so going out in the community and speaking on behalf of these nonprofits. And I got laid off 3 times in 4 years.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And at that point, I was looking for another job, but I was also running a nonprofit that I had started. And I was looking for part-time jobs so that I could still run my nonprofit. And my husband said, "Why are you looking for jobs? Why don't you just start a business?" And bingo. And people had asked me in the past how they could improve their speaking. After they saw me and heard me speak, they would say, "I just want to be comfortable in my skin. You just seem so relaxed on stage and you seem so confident and comfortable. How can I do that?" And I thought, well, I've been doing this for a really long time and I know what to do and how to do it. And I kind of threw that together with my master's degree in education and my bachelor's degree in theater and decided I was going to start coaching people on how to be speakers.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that speakers make?
Well, it depends. Now, I believe you are focusing on this podcast more on experienced speakers. Is that right?
It could be. You could answer it any way you want. We have all kinds of people that listen to the podcast, people that are speakers, people that are beginning, people that want to become speakers, people that are into the speaker conversation.
Well, I think I'm going to say the one thing that I think kind of covers all of the presenters that are out there. I primarily work with business presenters, so thought leaders, change makers, nonprofit leaders, business leaders. But even with experienced, say, professional speakers, I think the biggest mistake that I see is taking themselves too seriously, trying to be the smartest person in the room, trying to be the funniest person in the room, trying to impress people. And instead of making it about the audience, making it about them. That's probably the number one mistake that I see across the board.
And what would you advise a speaker in like their preparation to make it about the audience? Is there questions to ask? What would you tell somebody?
Absolutely. And not enough people research their audiences in advance. A lot of people are giving canned presentations where they take the same presentation and they give it to one group after another. And so 2 ways to deal with that. If you have a captive audience, like I generally do because I do a lot of corporate training. So I generally have a captive audience. I can ask the organizer to send out a survey. So I'll send out a couple of questions in advance, both to the organization and to the people, so that I can balance what the organization wants with my training and what the people want. But a lot of people are giving public presentations, say at conferences, and they don't know who's going to be there. So I would say, ask the audience a few questions in advance at the very beginning. Show up, meet people, chat with people, get a sense of who's in the room. And then when you start your presentation, ask a couple of questions right off the bat to get a sense of who's in the room. And that way you can adjust so that you don't just come across with this canned thing for everybody.
You know, it's true. When we know the audience, I mean, I can speak about the same thing, but if I gear it just slightly towards whoever I'm speaking to, the impact's going to be tremendously different than if I just gave the same canned speech. And it may be the exact same stuff, but I just, tailor it towards the my examples might be to incorporate whatever the audience, if I'm speaking to a group of plumbers, and I might use an example of plumbers and how it relates to their online marketing, or, whatever it happens to be. Eric, you probably do this too. Well, Eric does sales scripting, so it's specific, right?
Yeah.
But even in your speeches and stuff, I know you've spoken, like right now you're speaking to a bunch of boards of realtors, right? Is that what you're doing, Eric?
Yeah, that was my speech last week, and I've been prospecting for other places to speak to the boards, and I found that to be a good niche for me.
But that conversation is uniquely different than just say to a general chamber of commerce, correct?
Yeah, because I know about how much money they're making, and I know what their problems are. And like right now, the market where I live it's a challenging real estate market, so they're in a lot of pain right now. And so I can, if I'm talking to a general chamber audience, I won't be bringing up those things.
That's cool. I love the survey. Before, I would have never thought of that. So if that's the number one mistake, what would you say the number two biggie mistake would be that speakers make?
I think the number two biggie would be something that you mentioned already, and that is not engaging the audience, because your audience has a lifetime of knowledge and experience that they bring to the table. And you're never walking into a room where everyone in the room is a blank slate on your topic. We'd like to think that, we know everything and we're the smartest person in the room, but you are not coming in there to pour wisdom into an empty vessel. And so by engaging, by interacting, by asking questions, by giving them opportunities to share, by giving them opportunities to speak to each other, by, if you're remote, giving them polls and questions and asking them for reaction buttons and type into the chat. These are all ways that they can share what they already know and apply their own lifetime of experiences to your topic. And the benefit of that is you also learn new things. Every single time I present, I learn new ways of expressing my ideas, new ways of illustrating my points, just based on hearing what the audience has to say and letting them participate and collaborate. I like to remind speakers that without an audience, you don't exist. Without an audience, you're not a speaker. So you need to collaborate. It's a collaboration. It's a created, shared experience.
Yeah, I love that. It is hard, I think, especially online. I know that for me, when I was teaching social media for so long, that I would get frustrated because there was a lot of misinformation out there. There was a lot of information that I just didn't want to. I honestly, I didn't want to know the audience's opinion. And so I therefore would start every presentation saying, let's just put aside whatever we've learned and start from the ground up, and anything that that applies that you've learned already, then you can incorporate it. Because it can be difficult sometimes. Like for me, when there's a specific strategy or, a specific technique that I want to teach, if they've learned something that maybe was, and it's not necessarily wrong, but it doesn't apply to the strategy. It's like there's a unique strategy, but it is cool. I love that engaging and interacting. I think all of us are interactive and engaging speakers. I know I love to get the audience involved. I just saw a comedian, can't remember her name, but she was one of those people that just would ask questions from the audience, and then she would gear her routine off of it. And it was absolutely hilarious. And I thought, wow, how dangerous could that be? Because, not everyone's going to participate maybe the way you think, but I guess obviously they did it so much that it was no big deal.
I actually did that. I did that at a conference last week. I was in a room where the speaker didn't show up. And there were like 20, 25 people sitting there waiting for a presentation on a topic that I don't teach. But when the organizers came in and some of the people in the room had already heard my session the day before, so they already knew me, and they were joking, Lisa, are you here to present? Are you going to give the presentation? I told the organizer, I'll jump in, I'll step in. And that's what I did.
Wow. I remember seeing your post on this and I was like, okay, that's a consummate pro right there.
I mean, I've never done it before, but I started out by asking them, what are your top concerns about speaking? And it's sort of narrowed down where a lot of people are still struggling with remote presenting and using Zoom and using the tools in Zoom. So that's where we went. We spent an hour talking about remote and virtual presenting, and which is one of my topics, which is one of the things I teach on. So it was easy for me, but I based it on having a conversation. What are your questions? What are your difficulties? We'd get through kind of that piece. And then I'd say, okay, what's next? And it was really fun and it went really well.
That's really cool.
So Lisa, you've been in this for, 3 decades plus now. And I'm sure that your career has evolved a lot. Then we had COVID hit, we went to virtual presenting. So as far as like what you're focused on now in your career, is it corporate training? Is it speaker coaching? What's kind of the current thing that you're up to?
My business is about half and half. So I do about half one-to-one coaching with business presenters and entrepreneurs. Those are kind of my primary clients. And then the other half is corporate training, going into companies and helping companies get their people ready to go out in the community or speak at conferences and to represent their companies the best they can. And I do that. I already have been doing remote training for, I don't know, since 2012. I was doing trainings. Do y'all remember this? Sabrina, I think I've known you almost that long. We used to do teleseminars.
Yes.
Or maybe Eric, you did too. Teleseminars. We would literally do a training over the phone and people would call into a bridge line.
Yes.
So that's how long I've been doing remote presenting. So when we finally got video, and we finally got things like Skype and so forth, it was amazing. And we could put slides up and we could see people's faces. But I've been doing that for a long time. So it was more a pivot for my clients than it was for me. I was happy to stay home and do trainings on the computer. I mean, that's like my greatest joy for me, not having to get on a plane. So, my clients have mostly stayed the same, but they're switching to some different formats now, which is really fun for me.
When you coach, do you coach also on how to get corporate training, or is the coaching just focused on how to present from the front of the room?
I'm pretty much a pure presentations coach. I'm not a business coach. I'm not a sales or marketing coach, or, oh my God, some people think I'm a life coach. It's hard sometimes when
there's not be a presenter coach without being a life coach. I mean, sometimes it's the mindset, right?
Actually, if you see my top hashtags on LinkedIn these days are, this is what professional looks like, and speaking up for change. I have kind of become a life coach. But yeah, I'm pretty straightforward as a presentation skills coach. However, I got really, really hooked on audience engagement a few years. When I wrote my book, actually, that came out in 2017, I don't think I even realized it before then that I am all about human connection. How do you ditch perfection and make connection with your audience? And so that's how I've evolved over time. And I really focus probably primarily on audience engagement now.
That's awesome. So you actually have a little gift for our audience, don't you? You have your book that you talked about. And can you just tell us like maybe a couple little things about the book?
Well, the fun thing about the book, it's very lighthearted. It's a very easy read. I've been writing a blog since 2006, and I'm lazy. And I did not want to write a book from scratch. So the blog became my starting point for the book. And when I started pulling things from the blog that I wanted to go into the book, that's when I realized what the things are that I really like to talk and write and speak about. So the book really focuses on not taking yourself too seriously, making presentations fun, learning how to engage, learning how to have, I already said have fun. But anyway,
Well, let's emphasize how much fun you should have then.
let's emphasize, having fun, not worrying about making mistakes. One of my primary comments that I use a lot of analogies. So the book is full of athlete analogies and food and restaurant and cooking and things. And I like
All right, you had me at food.
crashes are part of the race. Yeah, right. Crashes are part of the race comes from the Tour de France. I have a whole bunch of food analogies in there about, making a pie crust. And I have stuff about a tattoo artist and, what you can learn from a Vitamix salesman. So the book is just a lot of fun and very
That's so cool. Yeah. And so just so everyone who's listening would like to know what the link is, it's Coach Lisa B, as in Braithwaite. Wait, see, I got it wrong there at that time, but CoachLisaB.com and then / presenting for humans, all lowercase, presenting for humans in all one word ran together. So CoachLisaB.com / presenting for humans. And that's exciting. Well, thank you for sharing that book. And we really appreciate you being here. There's so many mistakes we all make. And I know that I don't go a day without making lots of them. And some of them I have to apologize profusely for, but we keep moving forward. My grandma used to say, it's not the mistakes that we make, it's what we learn from them that really makes us become powerful. So I love that. And that's really so true. I've learned to grow my business through many mistakes. Well, thank you for being here, Lisa. We really appreciate you. And I'm excited I'm going to go get your book. I want to go read it. I'm sure I'll chuckle. Well, Eric, another great show. I feel like we made some mistakes here today, but we got through it.
Well, remember when we launched our show here in the first place, and it was just the first episode. I think we had to ditch it. It didn't work because
it was so bad. Yeah,
it wasn't good. But I noticed that previously we were live streaming, and it looked like this time we got the recording on to live stream later, right?
Yeah. See, I'm learning.
Yeah. We're learning.
Every show we get just a tiny bit better, and then we get a little bit worse on some other area, right? I always think it's like a basket of goodies, and then it's like just when I think I get all the goodies, and some of them keep falling out, and I have to bend over to pick them up, and as I bend over to pick them up, more fall out. It's just anyway.
Yeah, our last show that Sabrina and I did, we were all set with our new backgrounds, and then with our green screen, we were glowing, and so we had to ditch that, and so it would have been a blooper reel. And I think that there's a lot of issue in the speaking world of people feeling like it needs to be perfect and they've got to have it down right. And what I always tell new speakers is get to 10 speeches as quickly as you can, because those first 10, there's such a learning curve. And there's really not a whole lot to coach on from my view, until somebody's gotten to 10 speeches, because they're just the experience of it, they're going to learn so much. And I love on our show how we have people that are doing it. We just had our great guest who has, 30 plus years of experience. Not only is she a coach, but she's a corporate trainer. So she's walking the talk, doing an amazing job. And, it's just great. I love that we're sharing all this great content with our audience to help them become even better speakers.
Yeah, I love that about speakers. I'm always reminded that when you make a mistake, don't let that be your anchor. Let it be an opportunity for you to learn and move forward and become better, because sometimes we can really I'm an all or nothing person. And so sometimes I feel like, well, I blew it. I screwed up. I've wrecked my reputation. That's it. But that's not the reality. And in fact, audiences, if you own your mistakes as you do them, you become more real for them, and more, you like what Lisa was talking about, is you have more of a connection with them, because everyone thinks, like I always think, someone called it the yada, 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 he's a millionaire kind of a thing. And what they don't tell you is that he's lost his wife. He's like his kids don't know who he is. That's really what happens. But as a speaker, sometimes when you see a polished speaker, you think, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing or this girl's amazing. But what you haven't seen is, like I talked about the elastic of my pantyhose going out during the middle of a talk. And literally, fortunately, I had a long skirt on, but I walked out like a penguin and I had to walk up some stairs, and I quickly walked out and literally got out there behind the table and pulled my pantyhose off really fast. And the person that was helping me behind the table was like, are you okay? And I'm like, just lost my pantyhose. Or sometimes things have happened. Like I've had screens fall over in the middle of my presentation and then not had my PowerPoint or whatever. And then just been like, you know what? I didn't want to use that presentation anyway. Let's just have a conversation. And I think the more you just roll with it, the easier it is on the audience, because the audience kind of does oh my God, what are they going to do? But when you just own it and you don't act like it's a big deal and you move forward, you can, I think a sense of humor sometimes, you can just laugh at yourself. I loved what Lisa said about not taking yourself so seriously. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. So anyway, another great show, Eric. I adore you. As you know, I just learn from you every single show. I just love your demeanor. You make it easy for me to make mistakes. So I appreciate that.
Well, I so enjoy working with you. And I have always enjoyed when I can work with women, because I like the male-female energy and the back and forth. And so it's just a lot of fun you've got your areas of expertise and I have the things that I bring to the table, and we both have accomplished a lot in the speaking world. And, we bring, 50, 60 years of experience, whatever it is, and actually out there speaking and marketing and building email lists and joint ventures and seminars and creating courses and all the stuff. And so it's just great to be with you. And I appreciate you having the vision for the show and asking me to participate. I'm just loving it.
All right. Well, that's another show for a wrap. So I hope everyone goes to speakershowandtell.com. If you want to get all the episodes that we have, you can click on Get Involved. We have freebies. If you want to be a guest or a panelist, just go to speakershowandtell.com and you can click on Get Involved, and then you can become a guest or panelist, or if you have an idea for the show. And then, of course, if you love the show, please tell us about it. Please use hashtag #SpeakerShowAndTell in any of your social networks, and be sure to like, subscribe, and share the show with other speakers that that could benefit, or up and coming speakers. So with that, we'll see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to Speaker Show and Tell. Eric and Sabrina have spoken on all types of stages and have easily done over 2,000 speaking engagements. They understand the strategy, the sales, and the marketing of the speaking business. Plus, they have on the pros that have done it, pros that have gone through the same struggles as you and created massive results. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on social media at Speaker Show and Tell. Thanks for being here, and we'll catch you next time on Speaker Show and Tell.